Hey guys, this is Tom Sullivan here with Real Talk Investing, and today we're going to take a look at Bitcoin and where we could potentially see it going in the near future. Now, there's been a lot of talk about it recently in the news and across social media, and we've seen a significant jump in price going from about $10,000 in September to reaching $40,000 as recently as the beginning of January. So in that 3-month time frame, we have seen an increase of $30,000. So the big question is, where's it going next? Now, before we can go about giving a value to what we truly think Bitcoin is worth, we have to understand what is it and how do we think this could be implemented more in the future. So Bitcoin, in the simplest terms, is a cryptocurrency or a virtual currency that is decentralized, so we don't have the need for banks or governments to be involved with it, that allows for transactions to occur online. So through this, it could be used very similar to how money is used currently, and you could use it to pay for a service or exchange it for a different type of currency. But the goal is to be able to decentralize it and get it to where it's person-to-person transactions without someone else being involved in that transaction in one way or another. Now, Bitcoin has been seen as the next big opportunity, the next big thing to take over from a currency standpoint or even just a technology standpoint. However, that does not come without a lot of downsides, as you've probably seen publicity being pushed on how this is a scam and how this is not going to be an effective way to be able to transact in the future. And as a result, there are people saying that this will crash down to zero. While on the opposite side of that, there are people that are saying that this is worth potentially up to $1 million per coin. So that's giving us a huge spectrum to have to go through to figure out what is this truly worth. Now, I'll be the first to tell you, I don't know, and I don't think anybody knows exactly where it's going to go. There is a lot that comes into play in figuring out the true value of this, and there are going to be a lot of factors that happen over the next couple of years that will be able to help either push Bitcoin as a secure currency and as a currency that is widely accepted, or on the opposite side of that, this could end up crashing if this is not seen as something that will be effective or is a good form of transactions and exchanging. So as we look forward, there are a lot of different things we'll have to be looking out for, and that will be including the overall acceptance of the coins or cryptocurrency in general. There has been a lot of hesitation from companies as well as governments to accepting this type of transaction going on because of how much can happen behind the scenes without being able to have government interference or different companies playing a big part in it, as well as having to keep an eye on where this currency value is going to go. This currency shot up dramatically a few years ago, up to about $20,000, and then just as recently as last March, it went down to $3,000. So right from there, we're losing about 80% of its value in a few years. And that's because of how volatile the market is right now around cryptocurrencies, as no one knows what to expect. So the question remains, where is this coin going, and how can we be able to figure out what we should invest in it for the future, for the long term? Now, what I would say with this, as with most any other investments, especially those that are very unsure of what direction it's going to go in, how volatile it is, and how quickly those prices can change, I would certainly not recommend putting a large portion of your portfolio in it and only risk what you'd be willing to lose. So to start off and trying to figure out the value of Bitcoin, let's look at the short term and see where things currently stand as compared to a couple of months ago and how the charts are showing the progress of the coin and where we'll see the coins. And then from there, try to figure out short term where this will go and what are key watch outs for us. And then we could take a bigger picture look and see long term where this may potentially. All right, so just to start us off, right here we're taking a look at a few months going back to early December or end of November and bringing us up to our current moment and where we stand as of January 21st is where this chart is essentially going out to, which is a couple days from now. But the most interesting thing that I'm taking from this is from December 12th when we started to see that slow rise in Bitcoin. following a straight trend line up to where we currently sit, you can see that there's been a couple of times that the coin has essentially bounced off of that line and then continued above it. So we are currently seeing it trending above this trend line that is now going out until the January 20th time frame. Now, on the opposite side of that, if we take the highs that we've recently seen from about 42,000 and start bringing that line down, we're going to run into a spot where these lines are going to cross. And that is where I think we're going to see a potential break, whether it's positive or negative in this coin. And to give that a date, that's looking like the 21st, 22nd of January is where we may see some sort of change. So what the hope will be is that this coin gets to this point and continues rising, breaking out of the top line that we're seeing and continuing to stay above that trend line that we have seen since mid-December. Now, what the bears in the market are essentially saying is that the coin right now is holding, but is not gaining any ground, as it has not gained since really dipping at around January 8th and has now maintained where it is. So there's the potential that we will see a sell-off in the coin as we continue to move forward. So what we'll do now is I want to take this chart and compare it to some of the information that we would see from the last rise that we saw back in 2017. So now as we take a look at the chart here, it's pretty interesting to see just how small that rise that we saw that was talked about by everybody truly was now that we compare it to where we are at now. So what we saw was back in September timeframe of 2017, we started to see a significant rise going all the way up until mid-December. And then at that mid-December timeframe, we saw a pullback. So that pullback took us back approximately $5,000 off of the top, so losing about 25% of its overall value at its high. And from there, we then bounced back a little bit, which made it look like there was going to be a potential recovery. However, from that point, the coin continually went downhill. As you saw, we hit lows of around $3,000 in that following year. So it just goes to show how volatile this is, where we're up to about $20,000 and can quickly drop down to $3,000 over the course of a year time frame. But an interesting thing for us to look at, and what we'll have to do here is zoom in on this last spike that we saw. So as we move in here, one thing that we'll see is just how the coin actually reacted and how things jumped earlier in the year during the specific time frame of when the coin originally rose. So taking into account this comparison to how things looked in 2017 when we saw that crash right at the end of the year going into 2018, what we have here is just showing a comparison of the different rises and crashes that we've seen with Bitcoin and how at the time it seemed very significant. However, in the long history of the coin now, it has not been that significant to impact the rise of Bitcoin. So for instance, in this first chart here from Bitcoin charts, in 2013, we saw a significant rise, taking the coin from about $10 to $50 up to over $200, which at that time was a significant increase in the value of the coin. And when that crashed just a month or two later, it seemed like that was the end of the coin. People did not think that it was going to regain its value. But then as you move further down the line, at the end of 2013, once again, we saw a huge rise, taking that coin from about $100 up to over $1,000, seeing the huge ebbs and flows of this. Now, on that first chart, looks very significant seeing that drop. Now let's look over to chart 2. And the 2013 crashes that you see, look how small those crashes truly were when you look in the grand scheme of things and how big Bitcoin has got since that point. So right there, we're seeing numbers very close to zero. And then as we moved out about 5 years later, we see that increase again as the coin then went up to about $20,000 and shortly thereafter crashed down to $3,000 after about a year of some ups and downs. Now, looking at this chart, once again, we are following that same pattern again as we see with Bitcoin, as now instead of hitting 20,000, we have skyrocketed up to 40,000. Now, is this the end? Are we still going to go up more? Is it going to come down? That I am not too sure, and no one will honestly know the answer to that, as this is so volatile and people don't know the direction it's going in. But what you can take from this data is, since the beginning of this coin, we have seen the value continue to increase. Yes, it has had a lot of ups and downs, but long term it has continued to rise, and hopefully from that trend we'll be able to continue to see rises in the long term. So to take from that in the short term, I think that Bitcoin definitely has the possibility to increase somewhat, but we will find out hopefully within the next few weeks of which direction the coin is headed in, and hopefully for the long term it will continue to gain in value as we look to make comparisons to this coin to other big markets, whether it's other currencies or whether it's comparing it to the gold standard, as we look to see if Bitcoin's market cap can reach that of gold. But as we start to look into that bigger picture and predictions for further down the line, just wanted to take you through some examples of what other people that are deeply involved in the Bitcoin field are currently thinking on the price and what their predictions are of where it will end up. All right, so let's take a look. So here's a couple of investors that have been involved with Bitcoin in one way or another, and the big one that stands out is right here where you see the Winklevoss twins. So these two individuals have been deeply involved with Bitcoin. They're essentially the most famous group, as they are billionaires with how many coins that they potentially have saved up and where they think this will continue to go. So the big thing here from their estimate is they think by 2030 that this coin will be able to be worth $500,000. And the reason for those thoughts is they think that the market cap of Bitcoin will be on par with that of gold. So in order to get Bitcoin to the same market cap of about $9 trillion, a single Bitcoin would have to be worth $500,000 to make that happen. Now they're thinking that this will disrupt gold and that people will use Bitcoin as a store of value instead. And as a result, this will start to drive up that price, reaching their target of $500,000. Now, another interesting thing to note here is that the rest of this list by 2022, and we're talking about venture capitalists, different investors, people who are working in the market in different ways, whether it's part of, as you see here, with Citibank, or it could be like a JP Morgan or Morgan Stanley. A lot of these people have different values that they're putting on this coin. And the big thing that you'll see is, look, they're saying by 2022, 100,000, 300,000, 250,000. And then as you look, the list goes on and on with different people that are putting significantly higher values on what the end of Bitcoin will be. And as a result, just from seeing some of this information, I think it's worth taking a chance on, just because there's a significant chance that this could become a store of value, could become a different way to be able to disrupt the markets and create a new way for transactions to occur between person to person. And as a result, I think it's worth putting something towards. Now, what that percentage is for each of you depends on what your financial situation is. So there's a variety of different ways to look at that, and that would be based off of your net worth, what your income is, and what your risk tolerance is. So I'm not saying everyone needs to go out there and buy a full Bitcoin, as that is almost $40,000 at this point. But if you do have some money that you could put into something like this, say between like 1% and 5% of your portfolio going into the coin, it's certainly something that's worth being considered. Now, you got to see what works best for you. I can't for sure say that this is going to go up. There is definitely the chance that this will crash and not work out. But based off of some of the information I'm seeing, what other people are thinking about it, and what the long-term effects and benefits of this are, I think it's worth putting at least a little bit into on the opportunity for it to potentially grow and become a very big store of value in the near future. Well, thank you all for watching this video, taking you through Bitcoin and where we could potentially see it ending up over the next couple of years. Now, long term, I certainly think that there is very strong value in it. and we will start to see it as a form of currency that's more widely accepted and could potentially overtake gold as a standard for a spot to hold wealth and store wealth. Now, in the short term, it's going to be something we'll have to keep a close eye on. As we went through those charts, it does look like there will be some big indicators coming over the next couple days, couple of weeks on what direction Bitcoin will go. And then in the long term, we'll hopefully continue to see growth of the coin. But as I said earlier, I certainly think this is something that should be put into as a form of investment, but make sure you're keeping in check with your risk tolerance and what you can invest in the long term. But definitely something to do some more research on, figure out if this is something you would be interested in, and then put a little bit in as long as it meets your portfolio needs. But thanks again for watching the video. If you have any questions, certainly reach out, and look forward to seeing you next time.